Today is July the 22nd, 2015. My name is Tanya Finchum, along with Alex Bishop. We're with Oklahoma State University, and today we're in Duncan, Oklahoma, to speak with
John Shipman. Mr. John Shipman.
John Shipman. And this is part of our Oklahoma 100-Year Life project. So thank you for having us.
No, thank you for coming.
Let's start with having you tell us when and where you were born.
I was born in Oklahoma City, May the 14th, 1915.
In a hospital?
I don't remember.
At home?
I think I probably was at home. Back then, I think everybody was born at home.
Sure. What did your parents do for a living?
I have no idea. I was a foster child.
Okay. How old were you?
I think about 4.
Okay. So did you have brothers and sisters, or do you know?
Yeah, I had. I'm the oldest one. I had a younger sister and a younger brother, but they passed away.
Biological? I mean, were they adopted like you, or
No.
were they really yours?
No, I didn't have much of a family there. Really, the family that I remember was my instructor when I learned to fly, and about 2 or 3 other fellows that we lived together. And I was about 15, and so they were appointed as my guardian.
That young?
Well, that was my family. I didn't know much. Of course, I knew I wasn't in the right family when I was foster child. So I came back to see my mom once in a while, you know. But no, I didn't really have much of a family.
Well, where did you go to school?
Well, mostly California.
How did you get there?
Well, the foster family took me there.
Okay.
The foster family got me in, well, we lived in Ardmore at the time, and they, I don't know how long I was with them, not very long, and they moved to California.
And then how did you get back to Oklahoma?
Well, I hitchhiked and rode the freight trains.
That must have been an experience.
Well, yeah, it was an experience, all right.
How old were you when you did that?
About 14.
Pretty young.
And that would have been during the Depression. That would have been around the Depression.
Yeah. Well, and two, that was about the time that the Lindbergh kid was snatched up, you know. That was later. That was a later time. But even that was during the Depression too. Mm-hmm. But that's the reason I rode the freight trains. Nobody'd pick you up.
Hitchhiking? When you tried to hitchhike?
Yeah. Well, I did pretty good at hitchhiking, but then sometimes you went for a long time without getting a ride. If the freight train came along, you'd jump in if you could. Yeah.
Well, what would you do for food?
Do without. Yeah, I remember one time a freight train stopped out there in the desert someplace. I think either it's Arizona, New Mexico. And I was hungry. And I ran up to this house, and there was a Mexican lady. And we couldn't talk. I mean, she didn't understand me. I didn't understand her. But I finally got out. She had some stale old bread. She gave me a couple of slices of stale old bread. And boy, that was a good meal. No, I did pretty good. I remember one time coming when I was hitchhiking. I got stuck in mineral wells down there, and it was dark. So I went to the police station and just told them I wondered if I could stay there all night, you know. And they let me in and fed me. Everything was fine. And one time I was riding a freight train, and they were arresting everybody that came in on the freight train down in Fort Worth because somebody had broke into a load of oranges. So I jumped off this freight train about 10, 15 miles out of town where it was close to the highway. So I got out on the highway, and oh boy, the first car came along, stopped, and we drove down the road about 2 or 3 miles, and he stopped. He says, "See those fellows over there in the trees?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, go there with them." He pulled back his coat, and there's a big star. So he was a sheriff. So I had to spend a couple of days in jail. I got out, and I couldn't get a ride, so I hid down some grass in the freight, pretty close to the freight yard. And when it got dark, I knew this train was coming by. I waited and waited until it got going about where I didn't think I could make it. So I jumped on, and oh boy, just was in between the cars. He says, "Get off. We shot a fellow off here last night." So I said, "Well, I've got to get to Oklahoma." He said, "Well, get going." So it was dark. I spent time in the grass there, sleeping, and I got up and started walking in the dark. And a freight train about daylight came by, coming up to Oklahoma, and it was only doing about 10, 15 miles an hour, and I jumped on it and got off in Ardmore. But I was, like I say, very fortunate on everything I did. And all the hobos that I ran across, to me, they were gentlemen. They were all, well, no jobs, and just going. I went to their camp one night, and there's only 3 or 4 of them around, and they made some coffee in a tin can, and they were well, they treated me just like one of them.
Somebody was watching out for you.
Oh yeah, like I say, I was very fortunate. Yeah.
How many times did you do that?
About 3. Yeah, I even did it. I was 18, I think, about when the last time I did it. Yeah.
Usually by yourself?
Yeah.
And because you had to, not because you wanted?
Well, no, I didn't have to, but I just, I knew these people, they were lovely people. They gave me too much, and I knew that I didn't belong, and it didn't settle with me for some reason. And I just thought I had to go see my mom once in a while, But I was flying at the time, and I came back to Oklahoma to see her. I think the last time was either 17 or 18, but I had that flying in my mind, and I was hauling passengers and all on Saturday and Sunday just to build up my time. And I stayed at that until I just wasn't making anything during the Depression. Then I went to work on the dam. They were building a dam there in California that worked at.
Did you finish high school?
No, hell, I'd say I have had a high school education.
Okay. And how hard was it at that age to learn to fly?
I beg your pardon?
How hard was it at 16 to learn to fly?
Oh, it wasn't hard, no. Well, that was during the Depression, and then I soloed when I was 16, but I started flying when I was 15, and it took me 5 hours and 10 minutes to solo, but that was spent over a time of about 18 months. During the Depression, maybe just one hop around the field. We used automobile gas in the airplanes. Of course, we chamoised all the water, all of the gasoline to get the water out. But there just wasn't too many people interested in flying. The time to afford, there was 3 of us, and all they was doing was just about feeding us. But it was worth it. I know one fellow came and brought something in one day, like one of these green trucks. Now, I don't know whether it was Express, what it was, United or what. But he was making $50 a week, and I thought, man, that's a millionaire. I wasn't, well, it just wasn't much more to think about. But I stayed with that flying, and I guess like I say, I'm very fortunate. I'm glad I did.
Well,
I first put an application in with Halliburton in 1935, but I didn't go to work for him until 47.
well, how'd you become interested in flying? What sparked your interest?
Well, I was riding a bus home from school one day, and I saw this airplane parked in a lot that no airplane ever been in there before, so I ran up and told the driver, I said, I'd like to get off. So got off and went over there, and they were starting to build a hangar. And I saw this pile of debris by a flatbed truck there, and a shovel and all around. So I loaded all that on that truck, thinking, well, I was helping somebody. And when I got through, a fella came over and he said, "You want to go for an airplane ride?" Yeah. And that started it. I went to work for him. And just getting my meals, that's about all.
Did you do that your entire career?
Do what?
Did you train pilots?
Yeah. Well, I trained some, I instructed, and then I went on this dam in 38, 39 up in Colorado. Pardon me. And I heard that they started a CPT course, Civilian Pilot Training Program. I don't know whether you know it or not, but they were training pilots for the war. They knew the war was good. So I went down to the airport there in Denver. Not the main airport, there's Park Hill Airport there north of town. And yeah, they need an instructor. So I instructed in that. until they really got into the war effort, and they built this field up at Chickasha to train the primary pilots. Well, the fellow I worked for in Denver started this field, so he had his other pilots, the ones with seniority, come down and go through that part. And I finished up all the other students in Denver. And when I did that, I came down and instructed in Chickasha for him, and then went to work for Halliburton in '47.
Well, did you serve in the military?
No. In fact, I was a flight commander up there, and I had one instructor. The draft board had called him up, and he was already on his way to New York. I went down and took a physical, and about that time, they were getting rid of all the instructors. So they put us on the enlisted reserve to get us off the draft board, so we could go ahead and instruct the pilots. Oh,
You got to do what you wanted to do.
well, yeah, in a way. Of course, those boys had. Now I'm not holding it against them, but just the way I felt at the time. I worked hard for what I did, and this was handed to them on a platter to learn to fly. And there was a couple, I felt sorry for them. They just couldn't do it. And I said, this was in my flight, that was just especially one. That he just couldn't do it, so I said, I'm going to let you go with somebody else. Well, they told him the same thing, so. But most of them went by. Well, most of them were turned into real good pilots. I got letters from a few that were during the war that said they thanked me for what I've done for them. But
Did you ever parachute out of one?
did I do?
Parachute?
Oh, we all wore parachutes.
But did you have to use one?
No, thank goodness. There's one instructor forgot to fasten a safe belt or something. He rolled over and he fell out and hit the tail and knocked him unconscious and killed him. Pardon me.
Well, after the war, what did you do?
Well, I worked for Halliburton for 25 years.
On planes? I'm not sure.
Flying, yeah,
Flying.
flying. I used to fly Mr. Halliburton. And all the management, anybody, salesman, anybody that did any traveling. Yeah.
You took them? Did you work someplace after that? Did you retire from there?
Yeah, I retired in 1973.
And then what did you do?
Just lived it easy.
Well, then we should back up. Did you get married?
Oh, I got married in '44.
During the war.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, we were married to a Chickasha girl while I was there. And,
How did you meet her?
well, she was a telephone operator. I don't remember really how I met her, really. But no.
What would you do for dates?
Well, go to shows, about all we had that time.
Did she like to fly?
Yeah, she didn't want to learn how to fly. I put her in the left seat there one day, and well, I thought she didn't object. I mean, if she objected, well, see, the Bonanza that I had didn't have brakes on the right side; they just on the left side, and the wheel flipped over if you need to be. And so we cranked up, and I said, "Okay, just taxi on out." And she started up and headed for the hangar. And I said, "Hit the brakes, hit the brakes." Well, I thought we'd lose the airplane right there. Then that made me wonder, you know. But I left her in there. We went over and picked up her sister and Ada. And she needed a little help, all right, but we got her down all right.
Well, did you have children?
No,
No. Well, did your wife work?
yeah, she was a telephone operator.
Oh, yeah, you said that. Okay. So when did you move here
1955.
to Duncan?
No, well, no, we. Pardon me. After I worked for a month or so, we found a place and rented, but we built out here in '55, 8 years after I started working for them. I got 15 acres here, and
Been here ever since. And been here ever since.
yeah, 60 years.
Well, what would you do for fun?
Well, back then, of course, I was gone a lot. Sometimes I wouldn't get in till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. Get out the next morning, 7, sometimes 5. So it'd be in Wyoming or someplace and pick up a group by 8 o'clock. So I wasn't outside of watching TV. And once in a while, going to a show, we'd go over to Lawton, have dinner, and go to a show or something.
So, did you own your own plane?
Yeah, had it for a while. I think kept it about 12 years.
What kind of plane was it?
Bonanza.
Bonanza? Yeah, you said that.
Yeah.
And so, what color, and did it have a name?
Hmm?
Did you name it?
Old Blue. I got a picture of it here.
Could you repair it if something went wrong?
Oh yeah, I had a mechanic's license, and let's see. Well, I did have a picture of it.
Ever have any close calls?
Well, yeah, about the closest call I had. Well, I had a fella land on top of me one night up in Denver, but the closest call, and he knocked the wing off. But he had on navigation lights, but the battery was about gone, and the lights, I didn't see him until he was right there, and I was instructing. I had a student over in the left seat, and I saw him, and I gave it the gun and kicked it around, and he was headed right for us, but he took out the right wing. But I had a BT-13 too. I owned one. That was a basic training airplane. I don't know whether you're familiar with them. They used them up here Dina during the war. Had for instrument and aerobatics and one thing another. And I rolled it over one day here in Duncan, and the safety belt broke. And it had a canopy, and I had the canopy open. I always Just left it open about like that. Well, my head went out, knocked the fiberglass or the glass out of it. But I always rolled with the nose a little high so that you weren't out against the belt real fast all the time. Well, when I went out, it took that airplane just a few seconds. I had plenty of speed when I started, but it took a little while for that nose to drop. And when it dropped down about here, it threw me back in the seat. Well, it was I only started about 1,500 feet. So I knew I didn't have room to half loop it out. So I rolled it out and came out about 500 feet. But that probably the worst. I mean, things could have. At that time, a little later, there was a bunch of the same type airplane. Fellas had noticed they roll over on the back and then go into the ground, half loop. And I got to thinking, well, they must have. See, those airplanes sit out for years. The one I bought was out at Altus. No, it wasn't Altus. It was someplace. Out here someplace. It was sat there for probably 2 or 3 years. The government had them up for sale. I bought that airplane for $200. Now, or before I got it, after I got rid of it, 40,000.
Wow.
It was a it was a Army airplane trainer. And if I'd had any sense, I'd held on to it. But, I think I sold it and made $400 or $500 out of it. After that seat belt broke.
So you like to do loop-the-loops?
Oh, well, I was an aerobatic pilot, but I didn't have an airplane with an inverted system. I used a Stearman that I put on a couple of shows. In fact, I guess the best one was up in Denver when they dedicated that airport east of town. I put on a show, but I had to use a lot of extra speed at that altitude. It only had a 220 horsepower engine, and at that altitude, it's probably putting out about 180. But it worked out fine.
Did you ever build one?
Yeah. In fact, here's some pictures. I don't know whether it's in a museum up in Oklahoma City. Yeah, I wanted a Youngmeister, an old German single-seat aerobatic airplane. Today it holds more records aerobatically than any other aircraft. And there's a picture on the wall over there if you want to see it. Yeah.
How long did it take?
Well, I bought it. The fuselage was mostly all welded up. I didn't have to do but a little welding on it. But I had to build the wings and everything but the fuselage. And it took me, it took me about 5 or 6 years to do what I did. And Clarence Page, or the Page over the museum in Oklahoma City, he heard about it. And so he and a couple boys came down. I talked to him, told him it was almost finished. I had it all ready except to cover it. And no, they wanted it. And so it's in the museum. They covered it and put it on display. It's on display up there.
Did you fly it first?
No, I never did get to fly it, no. Which was probably a good thing.
Didn't trust your own work or was just too old?
No. Everything I put in it was aircraft. When they covered it up there, they didn't do any rib stitching. They just put it on for display purposes. So they didn't finish it. Everything I did, it was airworthy. Oh yeah, I kind of got burned out on it. Well, like I say, I'd come home maybe 8, 9 o'clock at night and work on it and I'd have to get up 7 or get out by 7. So I just got burned out on it. But
What in your lifetime was the biggest risk of flying?
I beg your pardon?
What was in your lifetime the biggest risk of flying? The most challenging thing about flying?
I don't think there was any really risk. I didn't fight these thunderstorms like some did and come out with hail on them and one thing and another. But I was trying to take care of my passengers. Not only that, I was trying to take care of me, and if I took care of me, the passengers would be all right. So there was only a couple trips that I actually turned down thunderstorms. I mean, one trip I turned down had a line of thunderstorms all the way from Illinois down to the Gulf Coast. And somebody wanted something over in Mississippi or something. And I just, at that time, now if they'd have waited half a day or something, I might have done it or gone west and done it, you know. But no, there wasn't any really. I lost one engine. That's the only thing I left. I picked up some passengers to bring them up here, and it was instrument conditions. And I checked the weather, and then everything above, at the top of the cloud was 7,000. So I just filed to get out on top, because if you go instrument, they send you all around, and I didn't have enough fuel to bring them up here. And the first and go to an alternate. Well, the weather was bad up here, but it was supposed to get better. So a couple of hours, I thought I'd make it all right. So they sent me out on the east course. When I got to 7,000, I said, hey, there's clouds above. It looked like about 9,000. Okay, it cleared to 9,000. I started to climb, and the left engine just quit. It just quit. I was in a partial turn. Didn't make any noise or anything. My co-pilot didn't know. I told him, I said, well, we lost the engine. He said, well, feather it. No. I said, the carburetor fire. I saw the carburetor temperature had pegged out. So I knew we had a carburetor fire, and I turned the gas off to burn out all the gas. But the temperature gauge, when it pegged out, it just stuck. Oh, I didn't know whether we had a fire going or not, so I came on back, and I didn't even make an approach. At the time, we didn't have these navigation places like we have now. So I just made a let down through the overcast, and when I broke out, the airport was right there. Like I say, I was very fortunate. But it didn't have a fire. But that was the only time and then found out later, about 10 of those engines were overhauled with a bad pin that drives the timing pin. There's 5 pins that hold it onto the drive shaft. And Spartan in Tulsa did all of our overhaul, and they used some inferior pins. And about 10 of them, 10 airplanes had the same effect that I had later on.
Well, you have to think on your feet.
Oh, you, you don't have time to think on your feet. You do, well, you just got to get it down. Well, it had one in it would go on one engine, but how long would it last if the other one quit? You know,
Yes.
but anyway, I got them down safe, okay. But when I broke out, it was, I only had a 400-foot ceiling, but the visibility was good underneath. And the reason I made approach like I did, I know all that country down there around at this time, around the airport, there's nothing but bean fields, and they were flat. And if I needed to, I could land in that. So, but as it turned out, the airport was, when I broke out of the clouds, the airport was right there.
Mm.
All I had to do is make a little turn and land.
They've closed a lot of the small ones now, haven't they? Small airports.
I don't know. I've been retired
But,
for 42 years. In 42 years, they can do a lot.
How far would you fly?
Well, I guess the furthest, well, I used to go up into northwest Canada. Well, up north of Alaska, really. And wherever Halliburton had a job on, they didn't have any at the time. I don't know whether they do now or not, have a well of their own. All they did was service work. And wherever they had a deal, I guess the longest trip, we had an employee in a wreck down in Venezuela. And we flew down there in a Lodestar and pick him up to bring him back and we flew down to, I forget the name of the place, but there in Venezuela, we picked him up and brought him up to Oklahoma City to the hospital, which is, I don't even remember the mileage, but it's probably about pretty close to 4,000 miles, I imagine.
Well, would they give you time to sightsee?
Well, occasionally we did. I remember one trip I was coming down back from Canada and just happened to be over Old Faithful, or I was going to go over Old Faithful. And I could see it down there spewing. It spews every hour. And I yelled back to the passenger, I said, hey, you guys want to see Old Faithful? Yeah. So I got around about a half circle and I heard one of the employees, I'd heard him before. He said, let's get out of here. He didn't even like just a shallow bank. You know, so I'm sure it disappointed the rest of the boys. But they all got to see a little bit of it. But that was the best sightseeing deal I think we had. But yeah, I've seen a lot of things.
Pretty places.
Yeah.
Challenging landing places.
No, most everything, an airplane's built for an airport. But I have landed on what they grass strips that didn't look like much like an airport, but just they were all right to land in. But usually it was an airport that we used.
Did you want to be a commercial pilot?
No.
No.
No, I was. In fact, I didn't. Before I went to work for Halliburton, of course, I was looking around for different jobs flying, and all the all of the airlines wanted people with 2 years of college. So that knocked me out. So No, I was lucky, like I say, very fortunate to go to Halliburton, and I've talked to people, had friends on the airlines, and they just went the same place all the time. Well, we went all over the United States and Canada, Mexico. Well, that one trip down to Venezuela was only one really out of town. Well, we went down to South America one time, but it was just all, as far as I'm concerned, a better deal than the airlines.
Well, would you take trips on the airlines?
Not now.
No. But
No.
did you? What did you? Have you? Did you once?
No, I've been on the airlines a couple of times, and I wasn't comfortable. I'd rather be up there in front. You hear these stories. You don't hear all of them, but you hear stories. One that's unbelievable. Pilots were flying this 3-engine airplane, 2 on the side of this, and 1 in the middle, and they were flying from Dallas to San Diego. And about over El Paso, 1 engine completely fell out of the airplane. One of the outboard ones, not the one in the tail. They didn't know it. They went on San Diego. Now, you got gauges there to tell you just about everything, and especially fuel, and then these pilots got to talking to each other, overshot their runway, or where they're supposed to land. The stewardess came up and said, "Hey, weren't we supposed to land back there?" About 45 minutes round trip to get back where they. Oh, no, I don't think I want any of it. I don't blame anybody else, but then that's the airlines.
Right.
They don't let you know everything. They're afraid they might scare somebody off the airline,
Well, I want to back up. When you were a child, you were in Ardmore?
Ardmore?
Yeah, when you were a foster child, you were in Ardmore?
Yeah.
Is there a foster home there, or was there a foster home?
No, it wasn't a foster, it was just fostered people.
Just the people that okay.
No. Yeah, mother had 4 of us there at home, and single. Mm-hmm. And
Is there?
I was too young to know what was going on.
I was just curious because in Sand Springs, Charles Page started a home for foster children in Oklahoma, and I didn't know if you'd ever been in that one.
Well, back then, like I'm going to say, this is probably back 1919, 1920.
No.
I don't.
It's a long time ago. No.
But people, I guess these people couldn't have any children or whatever. I never did talk to them. I didn't have a. Well, I just didn't even talk about it. Whether they could have children or what. I didn't ask them.
And did you,
But
when you met up with the hobos, did you ever hear of any stories? Kind of hobo stories that you often hear people talk about. Did you ever encounter any stories from the hobos?
no, they were seemed like. Now back then,
Like the
all I could say is
campfire stories.
They were just gentlemen. They never said anything derogatory about anybody, anything. They were just going from one place to another.
Mostly men.
Oh, well, I did run on one of my trips that I got on the freight train going back to California. I got on this train at night and went to sleep, and I guess I heard somebody talking, women talking, and what I done was got in the end of one of these freight cars that where they put ice and stuff. Well, that's where I was. Well, I crawled out of there and got up on top and looked over, and there was 3 young ladies sitting in the door. So they said, "Hey, come on down." I had to wait for the first stop, and then I did. I went there, and we all rode that into Phoenix, Arizona. And Law met us there, and he told me to get going. You know, oh, I don't. He offered these 3 ladies his apartment to stay in for a while, I guess. I don't know, but he told me I better get out of town. So I went and hid till I could find a schedule on the freight train there or something. I seemed like I had this schedule of all the trains because I met him. But I remember one time I was in Yuma, Arizona, and I even went down. Didn't know any better, I guess. This young kid talked to one fellow, and I said, "I'd sure like to catch one of these passenger trains out, but I never have." I said, "I always caught a freight train." Oh, he says, "There's nothing to it." He says, "The back end of the engine, there's a place." And I said, "Well, he says, it's wide enough to sit down and all." And I said, "Well, how'll I catch it?" Oh, he says, we can only do 7 miles an hour across the river there out of Yuma. He says, we'll be going slow across there. Oh, I went down there and waited for that train, and when it came up, boom, boom. he was doing about 30, 40 miles an hour. He wasn't doing 7. Well, I never did get on it. I guess they have a limitation, only so much speed on a bridge or something going across the river, but
You must have been a
boy, he lied to me, or whoever it was.
You must have been a good runner. Did you ever play sports or do anything as a child? You must have been a good runner. Did you ever play sports or that in high school or school? Or?
No, there was. I could run. I could catch them. But now these hobos, they told me the first ones I had said, "Don't ever catch the back end of a freight, because on a freight train, on the back side, say it's going this way, on the back side of this car is a couple of railings. It's not a step ladder. So you grab a hold of that, and it's off your feet, it'll throw you in between the cars." Once I got a hold of one that was going faster than I thought it was, and I held on, but it threw me up against the side of the car. I caught the front of it, but it had the ladder going up. But that was one thing that I hadn't thought about, even, but I appreciate that, them telling me that anyway. But I always caught one with a ladder anyway, because I would usually get up on top and see if anybody's walking down to get me. Back then they were chasing you off the freight. They didn't want you riding in them. I remember one time they're coming out of El Paso. I got there by the railroad track where the road crosses the railroad track. And I got up against the building in some weeds. And I waited about an hour to get this train coming to Oklahoma. Up toward Oklahoma anyway, going to, and it was only doing about maybe 10 miles an hour or so. It wasn't going very fast. And I waited until I could see it had a bunch of cars on it. It was just getting dark. Dusk. I mean, it was, I could see, but it was dark. But I wanted to get on one of those cattle cars so I could get inside. Oh, I saw it, I ran up there and I got on it, and a flashlight, big old spotlight hit me. The police were back. They had the spotlight on me. Well, I jumped off. They turned it off. I jumped back on. They didn't, I guess they looked away or something because and they didn't turn it back on. Well, I got in that one of those freight car, cattle car. You know, they have laths so the air couldn't. Well, I got inside that, and it seemed like they went about 10 or 15 miles and started slowing down, and I wondered why in the world they were slowing down. Well, finally they came to a stop. Well, I got over, and I could see with a flashlight, they were coming down each side of the car and looking for people on it, see. Well, when they got about 2 cars down, I crawled up and held myself up against the roof there. You know, it had those laths. And I held up there, I could see they came to shine the flashlight all and went on, and pretty soon started up. And I think I rode it up here almost hard more. But there's certain things that, you know, you have in your mind. Like right then, it was hard to hitch a ride on the road. So,
Well, did you ever think, with all these adventures and things that you've been through, did you ever think you'd make it to 100?
oh no, never even. Oh, like I say, I've been on borrowed time for 20 years. No, I thought if I made it past 40, I did pretty good. See, tell me, you folks within this program, you have people with their balance, and of course you said they had this macular degeneration, and
Well, what do you see as your biggest challenge at 100? What is your biggest challenge at 100?
biggest what?
Challenge.
Challenge?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd like to get over, I've exercised my old knees, and I've asked many doctors, they can't do anything about. I'm sure it's macular degeneration. If I could get rid of that, that'd help my balance. But there's something in my head that I'm not, I don't know whether it's a medication. You know, and I'm wearing a pacemaker. I was trying to avoid these doctors, but we need them. But when I had that thing pass on my knee where they shoot you with that needle, they prescribed Bextra. Well, I took that Bextra for about a year, and then they took it off the market, it was affecting people's heart. So they took it off the market. Now, I don't know whether that affected my heart or what, but I've always took my own pulse for years. I'd do exercise or run, and back then they saying check your pulse, get it 120, and see how fast it comes back down. Well, so when I was exercising one morning, and after exercise and resting, it'd be about 60. Well, one morning it was about in the 50s, and I was getting a 6-month blood check, and a week or so after that, I went in for this blood check, and the nurse took my pulse, didn't say anything about it, and took my blood. I said, do you think we ought to talk to the doctor about my pulse? No, I said, you're going to be here in a day or two and talk to him. Well, I went in to check how my blood was, and I found out everything seemed to be all right. I said, Doc, did you take my pulse? I think it was about 48. He said, you need a pacemaker. I said, yeah. I said, I was in here the other day, and the nurse, I said it was low, and I asked her, and I wasn't blaming anybody. So I had a pacemaker, but getting back to, pardon me, some of these people that make it 100, now I'm not saying they do. I believe that I know 2 or 3 sources that they didn't, pardon me, that they didn't check their pulse, and it just goes down and you don't feel bad. When I went in to get my pacemaker, it's down to 44 pulse rate. And I was feeling like I am right now. So I think that I've asked the doctors, yeah, they don't know. But I think I had an uncle. He was driving a weed eater, and just fell off of it and died. And I think that might have had, a heart problem. Well, that's a heart problem. If it quits, you got heart problem.
A little bit.
So, and 2 or 3 other people that I know. And then, I've asked people down to senior citizens a couple of times, hey, do you ever take your pulse? No, leave that to the doctor. One fella, that he was having little problems and he didn't know what. And I said, do you check your pulse? No. I said, let me check it. So I checked it, and it felt, I didn't have a second hand on the watch or anything, but I was just going. I said, it feels all right, but I said, you ought to have it checked. Well, he didn't last very long. So I'm thinking that people that don't check their own pulse, they never know, they might fall over dead. And no people said, well, why?
Well,
See what I mean?
well, what's your secret to living so long? What's your secret to longevity?
I wish I could tell you. I have no reason. Like I say, none of my old friends made it over 85. And a lot of them intercepted. My co-pilot was only 72.
What's a typical day like for you? What time do you get up, and what do you do during the day, and when do you go to bed?
Well, now you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I get up at 6:30, and Ralph and I go have breakfast. Time I get through,
Yeah,
of
and
course I've used contact lens. It takes me a little while to get my lens in, and he comes by about 9, and we go have breakfast up there
who's Ralph?
with Ralph.
Yeah, who is that?
Hmm?
Who is Ralph?
Oh, this boy, Ralph.
Yeah, is it a neighbor?
Yeah. This little rent house over here, he lives in it.
So he picks you up and takes you to breakfast.
Yeah, he drives me around.
Okay.
I think I could still drive, but he doesn't want me to. Now I can see, like I say, if I just look at something right straight, it's not there. But my peripheral vision is pretty good. I can't recognize faces. That's because I can't focus. But I can see you wear glasses, but I can't see your eyes. I can see your glasses, but I can't. But I can see well enough to drive. I drove.
Well, where does Ralph take you typically during the day?
We go have breakfast up there, where we at the truck center there, or truck stop. Come home, I rest a little bit. I do a lot of resting. And 11:30 we go down to the center and have lunch. And I play pool till about 2:30. He comes by and picks me up. And whatever, if he's got something to do, or hey, then come home and rest. Then usually I'll buy a dinner and they'll come over and eat, or they'll fix dinner and come over and eat. So he's done a lot, and especially for the wife. See, she was on oxygen, and wherever she went, she had to take that oxygen, and he had an oxygen tank on a dolly, and Ralph just took her everywhere, and he's, of course, and he's taking good care of me. Yeah.
Lucky to have him. Lucky to have him.
Oh yeah. Well, I guess he was having problems. See, I've had this rent house ever since we were over here. And the last people I rented to, they tore out a wall and put in air conditioning, one thing and another. And when they moved, it just made me feel bad. I told the wife, I said, we just won't rent it anymore. Well, a couple of days, Ralph showed up with his wife and 2 children and asked that he heard that I had a place to rent. And I said, the people that lived in there tore out the section of the wall and put a air conditioner in. I said, if you want to live in it, I said, I'll give you the key, you go look at it, and rent free, you just keep the place up, keep it halfway decent. So I gave him the key, and he came back and he said, yeah, well, so that's the way it's been for about 15 years. So he says he was sent here to take care of us. Oh, that's suits me. But well, he's going to get all this property. I've owned the 15 acres and that, and he's going to get this and it's worth more than that to me, the way he treated the wife and me. See what I mean?
I do.
He's been real good. Never said anything. I got on to him. I blew up. He's hard on brakes. Yeah, and I blew up. I've been putting up with it for over a year. But if he doing the speed limit, he goes from the gas to the foot feed. And it's only from here to there to where you're going to turn or the stop. And it's the last bit. And, you know, I kind of blew up. I never treated the car that way. In fact, one night I came in with an airplane and I didn't have one brake. And I've always taken good, not try to overuse any brakes or anything, and it just built up on me. I mean, and the last 50 feet is that, and he's not probably like most people, you know. But anyway, I just blew up, lost. He never said, but he said he'd rather drive his car than mine. So I'm sorry I didn't ever told him about it, because I'm afraid if I bring it up, it may upset him. But really, you know, but he is. Now I've had other fellas drive me, and they're not like that either. I mean, usually if you're doing 55, say, I usually get off the foot feed and coast for a quarter of a mile or so. You don't come to a stop. You just slow down slow. You don't have to get on the brakes. But not him. And he's still doing it with his car. But
But he takes good care of you.
He's taking good care. He's been tremendous help.
It's good to have somebody like that.
Yeah. Oh, it's really, I guess. See, I haven't any mobility. Even the last almost year, I couldn't do anything. I told the wife, I said, if you fall, hon, I can't help you. Well, she did fall. I couldn't get her up. That eats on me. I called 911. Ralph phoned. I couldn't get him on his phone, but I called 911. They came, and it took about 3 of those big firemen to get her up off the floor in there, in the bedroom. And I just can't do anything. What Ralph does, I can't. He writes the checks for me, which I've tried to do away. I don't own a credit card. I don't own any. If you're going to write a check to the credit card, you might as well write it to the people that you owe it to. You know. So, but he's been a tremendous help. Really, and
Well, what time do you go to bed?
well, I'd go to bed before the chickens. Right now, I try to get to bed about 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Like last night, we had overcast. It got dark. I mean, it was a little dark by 7:15. So, well, when it's like that, I will get ready for bed and usually get in bed by 8. And sometimes 9 o'clock, but most generally around 8:30. I can't watch TV. I can't read. What is there to do? See? So I rest a lot, but I try to get up about every 30 minutes, walk around, get back and rest. But, I mean, I'm just putting up with it. I'm not worried about it. I mean,
Well, how did you celebrate your birthday?
well, I didn't celebrate it. They celebrated it for me. The senior citizens down there had they surprised me. They had a big birthday party. I've got a letter from the governor, even one from Obama. 100-year deal, you know. It was a real nice birthday party. The whole crowd down there. But I'm not much on this hoopla deal. I don't care about that. But it was a real nice party, and they surprised me.
Well, when history is written, what would you like it to say about you? How do you want to be remembered?
Really, I never thought anything about that. I've tried to play low key all my life. I don't. Anything that I've done, people can do. Some are doing it. Anybody can do it. I'm just a person. So there's nothing special. Just so happened, like I say, I've been very fortunate in everything I've done. Seemed like it's turned out in good shape. So I have no complaints about anything. Nothing. I just live minute to minute. Heck with this day stuff.
You're down to the minutes, not the day.
Yeah.
1 minute at a time, not
Yeah.
1 day at a time.
Right. Well, who knows? I mean, well, if I could get my head straight and get off this imbalance deal, my old knees, I'd be in good shape.
Ready for another 10 or 20 years?
Well, at least.
Do you have anything on your bucket list? Anything that you would like to do that you haven't
No.
done before?
No, like I say, I have no mobility. I can't do anything. I've either got to be holding on to something about sitting down. Fine, but when I'm up, I've got to hold on to something, or I can't even go look in a drawer. I can't stand up and use one hand to open a drawer. You got to use both hands. And the time I get to both hands, I'm ready to fall. And I've fallen so many times, I don't want to fall anymore. So I'll give that up. So I'm just looking at it.
One last time in the sky? One last flight? One last time in the sky?
I don't. From all these pilots and everything, now if I could fly it, even if the engine quit, I think I could take care of it now. Even though I can't, my macular degeneration, though I can see to get an airplane down, I'm sure. No, I don't want to do anything. I'm just happy the way it is.
Well, that's a good way to end. So thank you for talking with us today.
Well, I'm glad to.
It's been a pleasure.
Well, I've enjoyed it.
Good.
Yeah.